Any plans for this evening? Perhaps a game night?
Game over, man. It's game over.
Shut up. Play the game. Play it from your heart.
26 years ago, we started playing a little game. Now, we're all gonna sit down. We're gonna finish it.
And may the odds be ever in your favor.
And here we go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Dice Camera Action, a mashup podcast about board games and movies. As always, I'm your host, Jason Tripp, and what we podcast tonight echoes in eternity.
Hello, my name is Madamus Pyramus Cousinus, father to two lovely boys, husband to a beautiful and lovely wife, and you will hear this podcast right now. What's up, everybody? Hello, Jason. Really excited about this episode.
I'm excited about this one. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It's going to be a good one, yeah. So we are today going to be discussing the sequel to one of my all-time favorite movies, Gladiator II. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about Gladiator as well, the original. How can we not? And then, we've decided to pair it with For Glory, a 2020 Spielcraft game. That is a two-player deck builder that kind of has flown a little bit under the radar. I haven't heard a ton about it. There was a Kickstarter a few years ago. I picked it up, and I've really enjoyed it, but it's not one that I've seen or heard of a lot outside of that Kickstarter. I know you hadn't played before today, Jason. But
no, I hadn't played it.
Have you even heard of this?
I haven't even really heard of it, and as I was digging up sort of the ratings of it, like it's highly rated. It's like an 8 on BGG, but it's only ranked like just inside the top 4,000. So it's
it's got
like a hidden gem.
500 for sure. Yeah, it's got 547 ratings, so it's not a super small sample size.
Right.
It's definitely a solid game that I think believes. It's definitely a solid game that I think deserves more love. So we're going to give it a little bit of love today.
We'll get into it shortly, but I think it's just a perfect pairing. So good call. It really does certainly fit. And we try and make sure all of our pairings fit, but this might be the one that fits as seamlessly as any that we've chosen with the movie thus far on the podcast.
Yeah, it's super on the nose, and even like the political. I mean, we'll get into it, but even like the political stuff and the leaders of the gladiators, the people that organize and all that.
Yeah,
like, a lot
patrons,
of that is like worked into the bones of the game. But as usual, before we get into all of that and the meat of the show, we're going to do a couple of shout outs, some games and TV and or movies that we've been digesting lately. Jason, want to start us off with the game maybe?
Yeah, so we typically been leaning into some meatier, sort of medium to heavyweight games, but like you, Matt, and those watching video, you see your collection behind you. And as I look at my game shelf, both at my home and in our church cafe, I'm constantly thinking about what types of games do I need to kind of round out or balance my collection. And we're doing a 2-player game in this episode, but I'm really lacking in my personal collection some more party games where you can get 6, 8, 10 people around a table and have some fun. And I've heard about this game for a while, but I haven't owned it. And it's one of the top 10 party games, certainly on BGG, and it's called Wavelength. I don't know if you've played this one, Matt, or heard of it.
I haven't played it. I have heard of it, and I've seen it played on like YouTube and YouTube Shorts or TikToks and that kind of thing.
Super simple game, but a lot of fun. I picked it up recently. Had a couple plays with family and friends. Just had a blast. Good for kids, parents, all ages. It's kind of like Codename-ish, but a little lighter and easier. So literally takes like a minute to set up, and it literally plays right in the box, which is cool. The tray, you actually set up all the components in the tray of the box. So you separate people into 2 teams. It says 2 to 12 players, but it's unlimited. and basically 2 teams. And you got this like giant sort of wheel that just sits, almost looks like a Ferris wheel sitting inside the box. And one person assumes the role of the psychic. And what they do is they turn the box towards themselves. So on one side of this wheel, they can see a little section on this wheel. Think of a disc where you're seeing 2/3 of the disc. And on a part of it, you see the numbers 4, and then on each side of the 4, 3, and on each side of the 3, 2, just sort of fanning out. So a small percentage of the whole disc area is labeled with those numbers. And so what the psychic does is he sort of closes a door so he can't see where that is on the wheel, and he just spins the wheel blindly. And then he picks up a card and he puts a card with 2 words or phrases on it, one pointing to the right and one pointing to the left, signifying the right side or the left side of this wheel that he's secretly spinning. So, for example, it might say good to the right and bad to the left. So he's going to see that. Then he or she alone is going to open up the door to see, after they've spun that wheel, which direction is those numbers pointing. So it's almost like a target, like a dartboard. That's the target you're trying to get your teammates to guess. And so if it's on the right side, in this case, it would be the good side. If it's on the left side, it's the bad side. So if it's way to the left, if it's way on the far left extreme on the spectrum, you have to give a clue that kind of leads your people that direction. So if it's way on the left side, I might say Hitler. Well, that's as bad as it get, right? So then they have to use their little mark, almost like a gas gauge, and they got to point it how far, which direction, how far to the bad side, to the left or to the right it would be, to try and hit the bullseye. And then they open up the door and see, did we get 2 points? Did we get 3 points? Did we get 4 points? Right on the nose, or are we way off? And so if it was really far to the left and I say Hitler, that's pretty easy. But the hard part is, what if it's like right up the middle, or just slightly bad or slightly good? Finding the appropriate clue to lead your teammates becomes quite the challenge. And it's always exciting when they're bantering back and forth, trying to figure it out as a team. No, we got to move it to the right a little more, to the left a little more. And then finally they lock in their answer. And then before the reveal, the other team gets a chance to say, I think it's further to the left, or we think it should be further to the right. And so they can steal a point. So the team that's the active team can get up to 4 points if they really hit the bullseye, but the other team can steal a point by just guessing whether it should be further to the left or to the right based on the clue given. So super simple concept, but tons of fun. And game just goes up to 10 points. It's really tight finish, super cool. The few times I played it, it always led to some good laughs and just some good. It's like any good party game. It just sets a cool little vibe around the table. A lot of fun. Good game for all ages. It takes a minute to set up and a minute to put back in the box. It plays out of the box. Just a simple concept, but elegant, and it really works as a party game. So I'm really glad I added it to my collection. It's called Wavelength, and if you're looking for a good party game, a good appetizer game or filler game before you get into maybe a meatier game one night on your game night, highly recommend it. It's called Wavelength.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of Ito Rainbow. I don't know. I think I might have told you about that one before.
Yeah.
But basically, it's just a deck of 100 cards numbered from 1 to 100.
Yep.
And then you get a random category that might say, I mean, the example that I use is a great one because it happened one night when I was at a convention, but it was like the category was best substitute for toilet paper versus the worst substitute for toilet paper. So if you had the number 1 card, you'd be thinking of, and the person said sandpaper covered in dipped in hot sauce, Ooh. And then if a person had like a great substitute, they were in the 90s or something. So then everybody at the table, and there were, I think, 8 of us playing, had a different card. So if you were at like 30, well, you're like, okay, something bad, but not the worst, and if you were at like 50, you're like, maybe paper towel or something. So yeah, it was super funny to like, and then you have to try to put them in order. So it's a cooperative game where everybody at the table gives a clue, and then together we try to put those clues in order, and then we flip them over. There's the reveal. Yeah. So very similar but,
kind of concept.
Yeah. Also a lot of fun.
Cool.
So I'll jump into actually this is a
heavier
movie
game you've been playing, right?
yeah. I guess we could talk about my game first. Is one that I picked up recently. It was super highly anticipated for myself anyways, and that's Arcs. By Leader Games, designed by Cole Worley. So I'm sure if all the hardcore board gamers out there have seen it in the hotness on BGG and all of that. But I think I played it twice now, so still a fairly small sample size, especially for a game that has so many layers and nuances in the gameplay. I still feel like I'm super rookie, still figuring it out. The rules are not really that complicated, but getting good at and figuring out the nuances and how to play properly, for a good outcome, I feel like is something that you could probably play a dozen times and still not feel like you're there yet. But yeah, Arcs is kind of like it's a space themed area control sort of war game, though depending on the setup and how things go and how aggressive the people are at the table, there definitely can be games with very little combat. In fact, the first game that we ever played was 3 players, and they do section off parts of the map when you play at lower player count, so that you're still kind of crowded and fighting over territory. But I think there were maybe 4 battles in our first game, and then in the second game that we played, it was almost all battles. Like, that was just the way that things went. The second game, we also included the Leaders in Lore expansion, which gives everybody an asymmetric ability. And so that might have pushed us in certain directions to be a little bit more aggressive. But the real major hook of this game is that it's trick taking combined with area control, like the dudes on a map kind of game. And it's really neat. I mean, the trick taking, I wouldn't. It's tough to explain, because the only part of the card play that really feels like trick taking is when you want to take the lead. So basically the way it works is somebody will play a card, and then depending on what card they play, they'll get certain actions that's printed on it. And depending on what suit they play, they'll get a different type of action, whether it's moving troops around, building buildings, building ships, and maybe taxing a city to get resources, all kinds of different things. And then if you're leading, the lower numbered cards, so the 1s, the 2s, the 3s, will have more action pips on it. So if I play a 2, it'll potentially give me the ability to do that action 4 times. And then your options from there are either as the second and third player, etc. If you follow suit, you have to go higher, so you can only overtake the card that's there, and then you get all the action pips on your card. Or you can play offsuit, which is why, trick taking is fairly loose here, because you don't have to follow suit, and there's no trump. So there's the biggest thing is that if you follow suit and you overtake, you get all the actions and pips on your card. You can also pivot, which is to play a card of a different suit, and you can do 1 action of whatever the action is printed on your card. Even if there's 4 pips on it, you can still only do 1. Or you could just play a card face down and then copy the original card that was led and do 1 of those actions. So there's a lot of just trying to figure out how to, every hand is a puzzle, and really difficult to figure out exactly how I'm going to play this. And the other big thing is that if you're the leader, and only the leader gets to do this, you get to declare what's going to score this round. So along the side of the board, there's 5 different types of scoring. So whether it's like the person who's won the most combats, there's more to it than that, but generally speaking, it's the person who's won the most combats, taken the most captives, which, we don't have to get into, the person who has the most of this kind of resource, the person who has the most of that kind of resource, those kind of things. And if you're leading, you can declare one of these. They're called ambitions. Declare an ambition. It zeroes out your card so that your card counts as a 0. You still get all the action pips on it. You get to do your actions, but then you get to declare which of these ambitions we're going to score. We're all going to score this round. But you have to make a sacrifice to do it because you're zeroing out your card and you're giving everybody else at the table an opportunity to overtake your card and get all of their actions, right? Because if you follow suit with a higher, easy to do when it's a 0, you get to do all of the actions on your card. And then each card has a little icon in the corner that tells you what ambition it can declare. So when you first draw up your hand, you have the suits to consider, you have the action pips to consider, you have these icons. So if I have a lead in a specific type of resource and I only have 1 or 2 cards in my hand that will let me declare that ambition, I have to play in such a way where I get the lead, then I lead with that card. So it's really about, making lemonade is kind of the analogy that I've used. And I did release a video on YouTube. So if you guys want to go check that out, it's youtube.com/DCA podcast. And obviously there'll be links in the show notes and that, but I did a first impressions video talking a little bit of like my preconceived notions and my thoughts about the game prior, and then we played, and then my thoughts afterwards. And yeah, what I find really fascinating is that every single hand of, I think, 5 cards is really like a puzzle of like figuring out how am I going to play this to maximize this. And it feels like every hand is a bad hand. It feels like you're not going to get anywhere. So it's really like you're milking what you can do in every round. And I find that challenge really, really interesting.
Yeah, you mentioned this one, and a couple people have also mentioned it to me, and I'm very intrigued. It seems like an interesting mashup of mechanics, and I like games that are a puzzle to solve like that. They're really satisfying when you can kind of make things work and
when you pull things off,
squeeze water out of a stone, so to speak. Yeah.
Exactly.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool. I look forward to checking this one out.
It's a game that's been very divisive in the community. Like, some people are loving it. Tons of people and tons of reviewers, YouTube channels, podcasts are calling it the game of the year, calling it an instant classic, a game they'll be playing for 10 years plus, a game that's going to replace some of these 4X games, etc. It doesn't necessarily feel like a 4X game, though it has similar vibes. It feels very different, but it looks like a 4X game, right? Space themed, area control, etc. But it's very divisive because a lot of people feel like they can't do what they want to do, and I don't think it's a game where you're going to sit down, look at the board, and make a game plan. It's really very, very tactical. You look at your hand, and you're going to figure out how you're going to maximize that hand and squeeze what you can out of it. It's very tactical in that way. You're completely constantly pivoting.
Pivot and adapt each time, which is good.
Yeah.
I don't like a game I feel like you can just like game plan start to finish, and sometimes there are games like that, they feel broken, right? There's a clear path and you got to figure it out. I much more prefer games like this where you got to really stay engaged every step of the way because you might have to pivot. Yeah,
for sure.
Find a contingency. Yeah, cool. So that's Arcs. Awesome. I'm looking forward to checking that one out.
Yeah, we'll have to play soon.
All right, well, let's pivot to a little bit of what we've been viewing of late. I've viewed a few things, but one movie I want to highlight because I fear that in the midst of the Glicked phenomenon, the Gladiator Wicked phenomenon, as it's being coined. Last year was Barbenheimer. Right now it's Glicked, and we're gonna talk about Gladiator 2, obviously, and
Doesn't
Wicked is
roll
all
off the
the
tongue
rage
quite
right
as
now as
well.
well. But there's another
quite
movie in
Barbenheimer.
theater that I fear it'll be a real shame if this movie kind of gets drowned out by the Glicked phenomenon. And it's a movie that I'm going to go on record, and I think this movie will be nominated for Best Picture. And I think it will win at least one Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. It's
calling it now.
I'm going to go on record and call that right now. Sorry, Denzel. It's not yours this time around. It's called A Real Pain, and it is written and directed by Jesse Eisenberg, and I saw directed by Jesse Eisenberg, and I kind of cringed a little bit because this is his sophomore directed movie, and his first movie he directed was not very good.
What was it?
And the title's escaping me now. Oh my goodness!
When you finish saving the world.
When you finish saving the world, yes.
Okay, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, you're not missing.
To be honest, I hadn't heard of it.
Yeah, I saw it at a festival. It wasn't that good. So I was a little concerned when I saw this, but it was getting some buzz, and read the synopsis. It pulled me in, and I went to see it, and I ended up leaving the theater. And this is one of the best movies of the year, in my opinion.
Interesting.
This is one of the best scripts of the year for sure. And it's pretty simple two-hander. It stars Jesse Eisenberg, who not only directs but stars alongside Kieran Culkin. If anybody's watched the TV show Succession, I mean, that boy is on fire right now. And so basically they play cousins who have recently lost their grandmother. And they're grieving over the loss of their grandmother, who has a Polish cultural heritage. And they decide to reunite. They haven't seen each other much lately. They used to be best friends and cousins, but they've kind of a bit estranged. And they book this tour, basically to fly to Poland. And they book a guided tour to sort of get to know the Polish heritage of their late grandmother. And then actually they plan to leave the tour a day or two early so they can actually visit the former home of their now deceased grandmother. So kind of an interesting plot. So they join this tour, and right away you realize that these two guys are totally opposite. Kieran Culkin's this extroverted, bombastic guy, wears his emotions on his sleeve, whereas Jesse Eisenberg's kind of a little more stoic, reserved. He's, the family man, the hardworking guy with a wife and a kid. Kieran Culkin's just seems like a bit of a burnout. They meet in the airport right away, and one of the first things Kieran Culkin says to him is, "Yeah, well, I got something special for us when we get to Poland." He's like, "What? You got weed in your backpack? What are you doing, man?" And so he ends up getting a big package of weed actually mailed ahead to their hotel, so they picked that up in Poland so they could smoke a big joint every night together. And Jesse Eisenberg just like freaking out around him, like he gets embarrassed with his persona. But they go on this tour together, and the long and short of it is, it's just a beautiful meditation on grief and friendship. And the other bit characters on the tour have interesting roles and parts to play as well in the story. And they're both grieving in much different ways. One a little more outspoken, one a little more internal. And I walked away from that film really thinking, we're all sort of tourists when other people are grieving. We really don't know, even the people we're closest to, we really, really don't know what makes them tick deep down inside. And so we got to try and be empathetic and non-judgmental of others. And I just thought they worked so brilliantly together, the two of them. I just lost a family member. My father-in-law passed away in the last month, so I'm kind of going through that same process. So maybe that's why it kind of hit me and resonated with me too. So It was really entertaining, and it was therapeutic for me too. So whether or not you're going through that in your life right now, I think it's just a great piece of cinema, and I would highly recommend it. Kieran Culkin is right now the front runner for Best Supporting Actor, and Eisenberg might squeeze in for Best Actor nomination as well. So it's called A Real Pain. It's still in theaters, so don't let the wicked Gladiator II rage drown out this movie. It's definitely one worth catching if you can. So I really enjoyed it.
Very cool. Before I talk about my main shout out, I thought it'd be interesting to discuss a movie we both seen that I think might make a little bit of an interesting discussion. I don't think we're ever going to review this because it'd just be too painful, but you got to see Megalopolis quite a bit sooner than I did. I watched it just recently on digital, and oh boy, what a slog.
Yeah,
but
it's
an interesting project nonetheless. I thought it'd be worth taking a few minutes to talk about it. But basically, Francis Ford Coppola, for those who aren't familiar, I mean, we're talking about
some of the best movies ever made.
The Godfather, The Conversation, he's Apocalypse Now, just to name a few. So obviously this guy has a couple of legit masterpieces. Whether or not you're a fan of those films, they're undeniably great films, whether they fit your preference or not. And to be honest, they don't necessarily fully fit my preference. I do enjoy them, and I definitely appreciate that this guy in his prime was definitely like a force to be reckoned with in terms of directing films. I'm a big fan of Apocalypse Now, probably being my favorite of his. But yeah, so I guess he's been working, or this is a kind of a passion project of his, and he's been thinking about making this movie apparently for like 30
Decades.
years.
Yeah.
And it's I guess I mean, do you know its relationship with Metropolis, the like
the Fritz Lang
black and
movie
white
from like the 1920s? Yeah,
certainly
20s
there's
movie.
some
Inspiration from that. I could tell he drew inspiration from it.
Yeah,
but man, this is a pretty incoherent film, Megalopolis. Unfortunately,
it's like I mean, it looks okay, but I mean, when you can make Aubrey Plaza and Adam Driver and Jon Voight and like all of these incredible actors look this bad and bring out, it's like, I feel like it's a special talent to bring bad performances out of these people. I don't even know what he was thinking, but I mean, I want to say he hasn't directed anything in decades in the first place. So it's probably rusty. But he's probably just not making a lot of, I don't know if he's just not making a lot of sense because of his age or because he's been separated from it for so long. But man, I feel like he would have needed a team of advisors or something, because this thing didn't make any sense. And I took me 3 days to get through it, I think.
I feel like it really got chopped up. Like, I'm not going to defend Francis Ford Coppola because, his legacy and lineage speaks for itself. But, there's got to be like, and I said it to you, there's a 4-hour cut of this movie somewhere, and you said, "Oh, I'll never watch that." Like, I might not either, but it just seems like it's so incoherent and nothing fits together in this film. It's really hard even to nail down the plot of the film. It's an interesting parallel with kind of a Gladiator tale, because it's almost like a futuristic sort of. How do you even describe it, right? It's almost indescribable.
Yeah, it's like somebody asked me, like, what's, like, my wife, I I just watched this movie, that was, mostly self-financed as well. Like, the guy's unbelievably wealthy from a wine, from the wine industry. He has his own vineyards and his own wine empire. Yeah. So luckily for him, the reported 150 million that he spent of his own money is a drop in the bucket compared to what he's actually has or what he's worth. So I'm happy for him for that, because this thing completely flopped. The studios didn't want to pick it up. Anyways, it was a mess. And yeah, my wife asked me, like, well, what's it about? And like, I could not really answer her. Adam Driver plays some sort of like visionary genius,
architect trying to create a utopian sort of vision in society, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then I guess he's kind of head to head with the mayor of this town, and they're at odds, and there's like political back and forth and positioning. And I mean, to be honest, not a whole lot of it makes much sense, but the cast in this thing is ridiculous. I mean, there's some moments that look really cool.
Shia LaBeouf plays just like an over-the-top character.
Oh my god, I forgot he was even in it. Yeah. Anyways, check out the trailer, and don't watch the movie unless you're like me. The reason I wanted to watch it, because I'd heard so many bad things, is I just wanted to see the train wreck, and I wanted to kind of see it for myself. And I always enjoy somebody taking a big swing. I find that it's a quality in a project that I really admire. So I do admire the fact that he took this big swing. I regret for him the fact that this is going to stain his legacy quite a bit, as far as I'm concerned. But because in 10 years from now, when Francis Ford Coppola gets brought up, I mean, this is going to get brought up.
I don't think so. I don't think this will. I mean, the 150 million's a drop in the bucket. This will be, it'll go down as passion project, big swing and a miss, but it's still the guy who made the Godfather trilogy and Apocalypse
For sure.
Now.
Yeah, it does not.
I mean,
I'm not the kind of person that'll say like, oh, it hurts other projects. It hurts his legacy. I mean, undeniably, it can't not. But ultimately, like, this is, like you said, still the guy that made the Godfather, and which is still like talked about as being one of the, the best movie of all time, according to a lot of people.
Yeah.
I disagree with that take, but it's still an undeniably great film, and a masterpiece. But I'm not the kind of person who will even sequels. A lot of times people say like, no, don't touch it. It ruins the original. Well, no, it doesn't. The original can still stand on its own, and you can still enjoy the original for what it is. And that'll be a conversation that we'll have probably today.
Oh yeah.
on this podcast.
Speaking of sequels. Yeah. Yeah. That's Megalopolis. Yeah. It's quite a movie. It's something.
It is
there were
something.
A couple scenes where I was like, this is pretty cool, but they were few and far between. It was mostly it was quite the slog.
Yeah, there was a couple of moments involving freezing time that I thought were pretty inventive and pretty neat, visually, anyways.
It didn't really lean into that, right? Yeah.
Doesn't none of that is explained. At least I don't understand how or why or what's going on with that. But
yeah, it just got chopped up in the editing room, and this was the mess we got, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah. The movie I actually wanted to shout out today and actually recommend is one that I revisited called Bound, which was the directorial debut of the Wachowski siblings.
Yes.
I'm not even sure when that came out.
96, I think. 3 years before The Matrix.
96, yeah, you're right. So it stars Jennifer Tilly and Gina Gershon. And it's definitely a steamy one that was kind of, it was known for that back especially in 1996. But basically, Gina Gershon just gets out of prison. She's doing renovations in like sort of an uppity condo building. And Jennifer Tilly lives next door with her boyfriend, played by Joe Pantoliano. Why am
Pantoliano.
I Pantoliano? How do you say his last name? Pantoliano.
Yeah. Pantoliano. No, Pantoliano.
Pantoliano.
Yeah.
So her boyfriend, Joe Pantoliano, and who plays kind of a low-level gangster.
Yeah.
And so she basically, the two women fall in love, or at least have some sort of like lust passion thing going on. Mm-hmm. And Jennifer Tilly wants out of this relationship. She wants out away from the mob, doesn't want to be involved in any of this anymore. And basically there's a situation where Joey Pants comes into some money that he's got to clean and deliver or whatnot. And then the two of them kind of hatch a plan to steal the money out from Joey Pants's nose and kind of run away together. So yes, there's some steamy kind of like stuff going on between Gershon and Tilly. So that's obviously a big part of the film, but that happens in the first act. And it's really the second and third act that things kind of get really interesting. You get a great, probably my favorite performance from Joey Pants. Like, he was legitimately great in this. And it's just very, very tense. Like, the stakes are super high. There's people mobsters coming in and out of the apartments. They're here to pick up the money. Oh, the money's not ready yet, and it's got to be cleaned, this and that. And then, there's a shootout. The cops show up. They're trying to hide the bodies. There's like all kinds of stuff going on, and it's just so tense. And you often feel the way it's shot. You often feel like an outsider that's like. You feel like you're there, just the way that it's shot. There's lots of long shots, tracking shots where you're following characters in and out of rooms. And I feel like it gives you that tension of like, you feels like you're there. And so in a lot of cases, you find yourself holding your breath or trying to be quiet so that you don't like, tell people what's going on. It just, you kind of get that feeling out of it. And it really is a thriller, kind of a mob action thriller, set in like basically one location. And this was the movie where the Wachowski brothers the Wachowski siblings had written The Matrix, and they had pitched it to Warner Brothers, and they're like, this is a massively expensive, huge, ambitious project. Like, we can't give this to you as your debut. Like, what if you mess this up?
Prove
like,
yourself to us.
Yeah, prove yourself. So they said, write us a script with, much lower stakes in terms of like the cost. If you nail that, then we can discuss The Matrix. And so, of course, they made Bound, and they loved, Warner Brothers loved it, and it was well received. And you can see some of the like creative visual genius from the siblings, even in Bound. I thought they did a really good job. And I watched Bound after I had watched The Matrix. The Matrix was kind of my introduction to this team of siblings.
Well, Bound dropped when I was 18, so
those
two ladies for an 18-year-old were like, all right, I'm in.
Fair enough. Absolutely. So after I had watched Matrix, I went and watched Bound, and I thought, you can see the seeds of the talent,
Absolutely.
and especially on the visual effects and creative visuals. There's lots of like cameras going through phone lines and going through walls, and kind of really interesting ways to kind of like keep you involved and keep you in that one location feeling tense. So if you haven't seen Bound, check it out. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a while, but I should probably circle back to it sometime soon.
Very cool. Yeah. Before we move on, the last thing I wanted to mention, I'm just really excited. I got the biggest Kickstarter that I'd ever backed and received, and it is the Thunder Road Vendetta Maximum Chrome Edition. Nice. So it is this massive, heavy box, and I also got the Carnival of Chaos expansion. So the Maximum Chrome box comes with, I think, 5 or 6 kind of smaller expansions.
Oh, cool.
And then the Carnival of Chaos kind of gives you a different mode to play, which is basically like an arena battle. So it's this like circular arena where you just, all of your cars go in there, and you have like super weapons that you can track, that you can use. There's all kinds of things that you can pick up on the track. It's very Mario Kart-esque. It's a lot of, I'm really looking forward to it. My son, Charlie, my 7-year-old, is like super, super excited. Thunder Road Vendetta is one of his favorite games. He just loves it. And so when this came in, it was like a big, big deal in the house.
Like Christmas came early, eh? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we set up, the Carnival of Chaos, and like, we played it at 2 players. So it definitely didn't give us the experience that I'm looking for with this like arena battler. There's just way too much room to like maneuver. Whereas if you're playing at 3, 4, and it even plays 5 players, like you can just, it's going to be an absolute like, demolition derby of like,
Sweet.
Of carnage. So I'm really looking forward to that, and we might bring it out this week. I think I'm going to play.
Fantastic.
So just a little bit of a teaser. One of the reasons I wanted to mention it is that at some point in the new year, we're going to do a Mad Max kind of like probably a super
that
episode.
Would pair well. Yeah, that'll pair well with Mad Max for sure.
For sure. So you and I hopefully will get this to the table a handful of times between now and then, and I'd like to maybe do don't hold us to it, but I think we might do like a Mad Max episode where we kind of maybe talk about a bunch of the movies, or at least touch on
rank them,
that kind of thing. Yeah, we'll get deep into it, and then pair it with this Thunder Road Vendetta Maximum Chrome Edition.
Maybe we can even record a live gameplay of it or something too. So
cool. That'd be fun. So we'll see what the future brings, but I definitely love to do that at some point in the new year when we get a chance to get it to the table.
Nice. So that's Thunder Road Vendetta Maximum Chrome. Fantastic. Good stuff. So that's a little bit about what we've been playing and what we've been watching. Maybe a few things that might perk your interest out there. Maybe some good Christmas gift ideas too as we get into that season. We just had our first major snowfall in the last 24 hours as we're recording. A reminder that it's not too far away. But yeah, we're going to pivot now to our main game review of the day. And as we mentioned, we're going to be taking a deep dive looking at the game For Glory. So I'll just give a little bit of information about the game, and then Matt, I'll pass it to you to give the fuller synopsis, since this is one in your collection and one you just introduced me to lately. The name of the game, as we mentioned, is For Glory. Perfect pairing with Gladiator II in this episode. It was published by Spielcraft Games in 2020. And I think you got on board just in the last year or two with kind of a Kickstarter, a relaunch, or an expansion launch. It was designed by Alex Wolff. It is a two-player game. Plays in 60 to 90 minutes. The Board Game Geek weight or heaviness of the game out of 5 is 2.57, so it's right in that sort of medium weight game. It's a deck building game. It's currently rated 8, very solid 8 out of 10 on BGG, and 3,277 overall. So highly rated, but as you mentioned, Matt, kind of a bit of a hidden gem. So let's dive in. Why don't you give us a little synopsis, a little overview about the game, and then we can talk about our thoughts about it together.
Yeah, so the rule book game overview here says that For Glory is a game of gladiatorial combat and deck building for 2 players. Each player plays as the owner of a gladiator school called Eludus in ancient Rome. The object of the game is to be the first player to gain 6 glory tokens by winning arena battles. You will build your deck to prepare for combat during the machinations phase and clash with your opponents, gladiators, during the arena phase, who will be forgotten and who will be remembered for all eternity. So yeah, that's For Glory. It is a 2-player deck builder, as Jason said. When I first got into the hobby, kind of a little bit more seriously, as like, you know, when it became more of a hobby for myself, probably 5-6 years ago, one of the game genres that was kind of mentioned to me, or that I found, and for whatever reason, was deck building. And so I kind of did some research, and again, being kind of newer to the hobby, I was sort of looking for, you know, maybe a couple of good area control games to get into, a couple of this kind of game to get into, what's a good Euro to start with, that kind of thing. And, you know, the deck builders was one of those categories that I wanted to kind of own and get to the table and learn and understand, etc. And so basically what I had heard was that Dominion was kind of the godfather of deck building games, but that it kind of like fallen by the wayside, and that it had been kind of expanded on as a genre and had gone in different directions. And at the time, Shards of Infinity was kind of a big one. And that's one that I had, in my research, landed on as being like, okay, this is kind of currently the definitive deck builder. Or at least that's what I had decided with my research and, you know, what was recommended to me. And so I picked that up, and it kind of did a few different things. I had also purchased, what's the sci-fi one with the spaceships? Are you familiar, Jason?
Like Race for the Galaxy?
No. It's a deck builder. It's just a pure 2-player deck builder.
I have it on my shelf. Star Realms.
Star Realms, yeah.
Yeah.
So I had picked up a little box of Star Realms as well at one point, and I think I preferred Shards of Infinity, and Star Realms ended up kind of off to the side. Since then, I've obviously played like Dune Imperium's one of my all-time favorite games. Clank is a game that I own, the Clank in space for the sci-fi side of things, if you guys know me. So I, you know, enjoyed all of these. And then I am a huge fan of the like Gladiator Rome theme. And so at one point I saw that this game For Glory was running a Kickstarter. And I thought, oh, a 2-player deck builder that has this theme seems interesting. So I did some research, and in 2023, as you mentioned, they had an expansion. It was called Champions something or other. And I just decided to pick up the base game in the Kickstarter. And so I did. It came in. I played it a whole bunch, a couple of years ago when it first came in, and I really, really liked it. And if you put gun to my head and said, "What's your favorite kind of pure deck builder?" This is probably it. Since then, I've sold my Shards of Infinity. I've sold my Star Realms. I don't have any other pure deck builder other than this one at this point. So, For Glory. I'll give you guys a little bit of a rundown of how it plays. So, in terms of like how it's similar and to the traditional deck builders, is that you draw up, in this case, 7 cards instead of 5. I think traditionally it was 10. You start with a 10 card deck, you draw 5. In this one, it's 14 and 7. So you draw your 7 cards, you play them in whatever order you like. There is a market of cards that you can purchase from. It goes in your discard pile. Eventually you'll draw it back up, and then you'll have those available. So there's only one kind of resource in the game. So it's just coin or gold or whatever you want to call it. But the main the ways that it differs from your traditional deck builders is that I'm not doing any sort of damage or throwing damage at you during my turn. Basically, there's the machinations phase, where I'll draw my 7 cards, I'll play out all my cards in whatever order I want. There's a bit of a tableau building area to your game, and then you're obviously purchasing cards as well. So we basically go back and forth doing these machinations phase until we've reached a certain threshold of gladiators in the arenas. So now, the way that works.
Can we talk about the 3 types of cards, maybe, Matt? Because as you're doing your machination phase, you're not only playing cards from your existing hand, but you're based on the amount of gold you have physically, or some cards are the equivalent of gold. That gives you a little bit of spending buying power, and then you can go to 3 sort of specific areas or decks of cards that are off to the side where you can purchase those cards.
So the market that I had mentioned has 9 cards in it. There's 3 different types of cards. So there's the training supply deck. This is where you can buy basically events. So it's where you can buy tactic cards and reaction cards. So as you get to the second phase, which is the arena phase, where you're actually doing the combat, there are like reaction windows when there's attacks and different things going on. That's where you can play these types of cards. Then there's the Gladiator supply deck. Well, the Gladiator supply deck, surprise, surprise, is where you buy your gladiators. So there's a huge stack of gladiators, and they come with all kinds of abilities, different strength levels. They all have 3 stats. So one is their attack value, one is their life, and then one is their initiative, or how fleet of foot they are, let's say. And so that will all contribute to the combat, which we'll talk about in a few moments. Then there's the economy supply deck. This is where you'll get more cards that will give you coins or money that you can spend more efficiently. And it's also where you're going to get patrons, which is probably the number one thing that I found that makes this game really, really interesting, and gives it these extra layers. So during the setup, in the middle of the table, you're going to set up 3 arenas. So there's another deck that is kind of off to the side that you use during setup, and you're going to put 3 arenas. And the arenas have abilities themselves. We don't need to go into it. But there's potentially 3 arenas that you're going to fight in. And during your machinations phase, when you're like drawing up your 7 cards and playing all your cards, if any of them are gladiators, you can choose to play those gladiators into one of the 3 arenas. And then as we fill the arenas with gladiators going back and forth, they have a stat on them that is called the bloodlust stat. in the top right corner. And then it doesn't do anything other than it triggers when the machinations phase ends and when we start the arena phase. So between our two gladiators, if we build up the bloodlust number to a certain point, we trigger the arena phase. So then we finish our machinations phase based on who the first and second player is, and then we move into the arena phase. Now, as I mentioned, the economy supply deck has patrons in it. Well, the patrons is your deck building. So they are like politicians, trainers, different types of people that you might find in ancient Rome that would be involved in gladiatorial combat. And these cards you'll put in your tableau, and they'll provide abilities. So you can actually tap them to gain certain things or do certain things. Some of them in the setup phase and some of them in the actual combat arena phase. But the primary thing that they're doing is that they have a stat on them called influence. And there's an influence icon on these patrons. So I might build up, over the course of the first round, let's say 3 influence. Well, on the gladiator cards, there are also influence icons on those. And I need to have enough influence on my board to accommodate the amount of influence that my gladiators cost. Did I explain that properly? Does that make sense, Jason?
Yeah, no, you explained that really well. That's good. Yeah.
Okay, so basically, you're kind of having a prerequisite in your tableau building of influence, and if you don't meet that influence with your tableau building, then you cannot play the gladiators. And if ever something happens where you lose a patron, or a patron gets tapped or exhausted because you use their ability, or an opponent taps it using one of their abilities, and I don't meet that threshold anymore, I have to discard gladiators in the arena until I do meet the threshold. So there's really an extra layer of balancing what gladiators I can put out there and when, based on how many patrons I have and how much influence they're providing. So that extra little layer is really, really interesting. So there's some tableau building, as well as playing gladiators into the arenas. And then again, once we meet that bloodlust number, that ends the machinations phase and we move into the combat phase or the arena phase. I miss anything there, Jason?
Yeah, no, I just to comment on the machination phase. And again, I've only played it once just today with you, and really super intriguing that unlike most deck builders, there's constant damage being done each round, whatever. But this is like you're building towards, right? And you know how many gladiator values, bloodlust values, will trigger the arena phase starting. So you kind of want to collect and get your deck built. It's all a preparation of you're collecting a couple gladiators, but you got to make sure you have enough patrons, and you got to have enough of these tactic cards too, because those can go with your battles in the arena, as we're going to get to. So it's some really interesting choices even before the battle starts. So it's not just like boring building the deck and then boom, the action happens. There's a lot of strategic choices even beforehand during the machination phase, I found. So that was really fascinating and unique to a deck builder. So yeah, that's all in the machination phase. And then we get to the arena phase, and there's 3 arenas, but only 2 of them are going to have combat happening, 2 out of the 3. And one of them is worth 2 for glory tokens, and the other ones are worth 1 for glory tokens. So you win the battle, you get those tokens, right? The first to 6 wins. So got to make sure you don't lose those big battles repeatedly or the game's over. So maybe now we can pivot and you can talk about the arena phase and how that works.
Yeah. So it's really interesting because you spend literally half your game just prepping for combat. And I find that really satisfying, because if you prep properly and you do things right, and you tactically you're reacting to what arenas your opponent's putting their gladiators in, and you're reacting and or trying to set the pace of how quickly we're going to get to the bloodlust number. There's lots of things to consider there. So literally for half the game, you're just setting up and organizing yourself, and then you move on to the arena phase. And basically, as you said, you do that until a player reaches 6 glory, and as soon as they hit 6 glory, they automatically win. And so, so we move into the combat phase, and then we do one arena at a time. And as you said, only 2 arenas can be active. So once, basically, more or less, once 2 arenas gets chosen, the 3rd arena gets left out, and no gladiators can go into that arena. Right. So the first thing you do in the arena phase is that you have one arena, you look at the gladiators that are in that arena, you tally up each side's initiative, and whoever has the most gets to go first, which often is really important, because if I, on my first turn, kill one of your gladiators, you just don't get to use that gladiator. Right. And often we'll have, 2, 3, 4, 5 gladiators on each side. And so what happens is that on my turn, I can do 2 things. I can attack, and if I have a ready gladiator, I have to attack, and I can play a tactic card.
Before or after the attack.
Before or after my attack. So depending on the strategy and how things work, or what I'm trying to do in that moment, I might play my tactic card prior to attacking, or vice versa. So to attack, I just literally exhaust or turn my gladiator 90 degrees horizontally, and then however many attack stats he has, I choose a target, and I'll say, okay, I'll attack that gladiator, and then I assign the damage. So there's these little blood drop tokens. So I will put, let's say he attacks for 3, I will put 3 blood drop tokens, not on that card that I attack, but above it. And that opens up a reaction window where if you have any cards that have the text that starts with when damage is assigned, then you can play that. So as the defender, you can play a card that says, when damage is assigned, negate 2 of that damage, or take 2 of that damage and spread it out amongst your gladiators, or remove it and add it to one of your opponent's gladiators. There's all kinds of different things that you can do with those reaction cards. And then you may play a reaction card, and then I, as the attacker, can play one. So you can negate 2, I can play a reaction card that will maybe add 2 or move damage around or do other things. And we go back and forth until we both pass, and then wherever those blood droplet tokens end up, they then get moved onto those gladiators to actually take effect. Right. And then if a gladiator dies, you take it off the board. And then there's what they call insurance. Every time a gladiator dies, you get a coin.
And we should say it goes into your discard pile, so it will come back into your deck. It's not gone from the game for good. Yeah.
Yeah, so any gladiator you use, in your standard deck building style, you put it back in your discard, it'll come back up. So you're not going to lose that gladiator forever. Your investment is still going to work for you, ongoing for the game. And then we basically go back and forth until all of our gladiators are exhausted, all our tactic cards potentially have been used, and we both pass. Now, at that point, if there are still gladiators alive on both sides of, on your side and on my side, basically we ready all our gladiators, we reestablish initiative, and we go again until there are no gladiators left on one side. Then that person will win that arena. They then get the glory that is in that arena. It's either 1 or 2, depending on which arena. And then each arena has an ability on it. And then you are the champion of that arena. And there's a little sword token that you'll put on your side of that arena to represent the fact that you are the champion of that arena. And that ability printed on that card is now yours to use going forward until you lose that arena, and then your opponent potentially gets to use it.
Yeah. And we should say too, though, there's 3 arenas, and only 2 of the arenas will be fought in every round. One of those 2 arenas with the sword tokens, and the bit larger arena, I don't know what you call that arena, but that one's worth double the glory tokens. And that one, if you win, you physically get that card for the duration of the game. Whereas those lesser arenas, the one of those 2 lesser arenas that is in play, you get the sword token, which gives you access to that arena special ability. But should that arena in the future be won by your opponent, the sword then transfers to his or her side of the board, and they now have control. So those arenas give you a little less glory and an ability that could fluctuate, whereas the big arena gives you double the glory tokens, and perpetually you get that reward. So you've got to factor all that in when you're figuring out how many gladiators you want to play in each arena too. So there's some interesting decision making on both phases of the game, the machination phase and the arena phase.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is more or less how the game plays. Once all of the or both arenas that are active for that round have been resolved, then whoever has the least amount of glory gets the crowd's favor token, which is a cool little helmet, and that player gets to go second moving forward.
Which is an advantage, yeah.
It is an advantage because you get that last play, that last reaction, and the last machinations phase, right? Like I play out my 7 cards. We meet the bloodlust number. You still get a whole turn before we start the arena combat. Right. So yeah, it's definitely, we'll potentially go back and forth with whoever's kind of losing or has the least amount of glory. And that's more or less, there's more nuances and details to it, but that's kind of the higher level of how the game plays. So let's get into the review portion.
Sure.
So Jason, what were your overall thoughts before we get into like any of the nitty gritty details of what we liked and didn't like?
Much more positive than negative, and I'm not a big deck builder guy. That's not my go-to mechanic for a lot of my games. I'm more of sort of the Euro style area control or worker placement or some of the more puzzly abstract games. But that being said, this is one of the better deck builders that I've played for sure. Love the theme and love the nuance. I've only one gameplay, and I'm new to the game. You're a veteran, and it still came down kind of to the wire. I think built into the game are some mechanisms that keep it pretty tight. It came down to the last round, and I had to win both battles, and I won the first one, but I didn't have enough to win the second one, so you won it. A lot of interesting choices looking back, like the addition of those patrons, like having to have the balance of the right number of gladiators in your hand, but balancing them off with the number of patrons to basically equal or have more than the gladiators, and those tactic cards. Some of them have shields on them, they're defense. Some of them have battle axes for more offense. And to my detriment, I don't think I had enough of those shield defense cards that you just kept pouring it on, and I really didn't have anything to fend it off. But lots of nuance, lots of interesting choices along the way to keep you engaged. So there's a lot of positives about this one. I think my one critique, and again, this is maybe because it was my first gameplay, and this is my critique of deck builders in general, is that sometimes it's just information overload. There's so much information, all the cards, and what does this card do? And I've got all these cards in my tableau. I can't forget what this one does, and I got to make sure I do this at this time. And so if you're not very careful and observant, you can kind of be overwhelmed by all the information in front of you. There's a lot of moving pieces and moving parts, like a good deck builder. And some people love that. I find that sometimes tedious, but for my money, this is one of the better deck builders that I've played, and I've played dozens of them.
It's definitely the heaviest deck builder I've ever played. The heaviest pure deck builder, right? Like, Dune Imperium and Lost Ruins of Arnak and the Clank games, like these are deck builders that are probably, heavier than this. But they're not pure deck builders. They're deck builders as a mechanism that do a lot more than just deck building. But as a pure deck builder, where that's primarily what you're doing, where you're not playing on a board or whatnot, this is definitely the heaviest one with the most moving parts and the most things to consider and the most layers for sure. I'm a huge fan of this. This is definitely my favorite deck builder as it stands right now. I love the theme. The art is really, really cool. Yep. It's very like dark and gritty. I mean, the age on the box says, I want to say like 14. Yeah, 14 plus. I mean, the art is very gruesome. Lots of blood and lots of like, limbs chopped off and like dripping swords of, and all kinds of like pretty gross stuff. But the art is very, very cool. I'm a big fan of the way that it looks, and it's very reminiscent even of Gladiator the movie.
Absolutely.
Definitely, if more of the like smaller arenas, in terms of the art, it feels a lot more like the smaller battles in the Gladiator movies versus like the big Colosseum stuff. But yeah, I'm a really big fan of the art and the way that it works. And it's neat because, like, as I said, the patrons that we talked about, they're the ones that allow you to have X amount of gladiators. Well, a few of the like examples here is there's the crooked politician. There's unscrupulous counsel. Smooth talk as one of the events, and there's like trainers and all kinds of things that basically like a lot of elements that you actually see in the movies. So I thought that was as you said, a perfect pairing for this game with the movie as well. Yeah, so probably, as I said, my favorite pure deck builder. I love I might even look to see, I completely forgot that there was even an expansion. The reason I had backed this is because they had relaunched Kickstarter so that they could promote and sell that expansion. And I just decided to pick up the base game, but I've been such a big fan of it. I might actually look at the expansion and see what it adds to the game. Yeah, so is there anything specific in terms of like what your favorite things about the game were?
I kind of alluded to them, but I like that it's split into two parts: the machination and the arena phase. Because a lot of deck builders is just battle, start to finish, and it kind of gets a little mundane and frankly a little boring. I like the flow of this game. I think once I got through the first round, I got settled into the rhythm of the game. It's like, okay, I'm going to need to accumulate X number of cards. And so you can just focus on each aspect of the game as it comes, with not only that aspect in mind, but the arena phase to come in mind as well. So I think it's really well designed and thought out, the flow of the game. It's very engaging. Like you said, the artwork is fantastic. The production value is very high in this game. And yeah, it's one I will definitely play again for sure. Love to get a few more plays in of this. I think the replayability of this would be pretty high, I think, just because there are so many cards out there and so much nuance to it. It's not like there's one path to victory. You can go heavy on the big gladiators, or you can go heavy on the tactic cards too, right? There's different
yeah, I wanted to mention that. Because there was at least 2, maybe even 3 total battles where you outnumbered my gladiators. So you might have had 5 to my 3 or 6 to my 3 or 4. You had a ton of tactics
in your pocket, so yeah.
Yeah, so very early in the game, I had a patron that went to my tableau that discounted the cost of the tactic cards. So I decided I was going to go fairly heavy on the tactic cards and buy as much as I could of those, while still, contributing to the gladiator and patron side of things. I still need to be present in those arenas and have gladiators, but I wanted to go heavy on the tactic cards. And there was definitely a handful of times where I went into the arena phase kind of nervous, thinking like, there's no way I'm going to win this. You've got 5, 6 gladiators and I have 3. But with my tactic cards, I was able to often pick off, 1 or 2 of your gladiators before I even do my attack. So I was able to catch up in that way. Absolutely. and keep my guys alive by blocking damage or reassigning damage a little bit longer than yours. And so it ended up being a lot closer in those combats. So there's definitely different ways to approach it and different ways to kind of try to win those battles.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. It's not just get as many heavies in the battle as possible, right? Then that could be a strategy. That could be the easiest strategy, but there's much more to it than that. And don't discount the patron abilities too. Some of those patron abilities come in handy as well, like you mentioned, discounting the cost, or they can almost serve as removing damage as well, or blocking damage. Some of them. So yeah, I think
one thing
like
that was
any deck
interesting
builder,
about
you got to play it a few times to get to know the cards in the deck. Like first time I played through, I was kind of like learning on the fly. Oh, what do these cards do? Oh, maybe I need to pick up some of those. So I'm sure when I go back to second round, I'll give you a better battle next time around.
They ended up being fairly close. You mentioned the patrons and their abilities, and one thing I found really interesting is that a lot of the patrons, they'll have like an influence symbol. And if I have 3 patrons with 3 influence, and I have 5 gladiators that in total need 3 influence, one of my patrons might have an ability that says exhaust this to block damage, or exhaust this to do damage, or to gain coins, or whatever the case is. When you exhaust a patron, the rule says that patron card is blank completely, so that does not provide that influence anymore. So you have to be careful. Sometimes you might want to tap one of your patrons to gain an ability, but then you might look at your board and realize that you don't have enough influence left to accommodate your gladiators. So there's lots of decision making in that kind of way as well.
Yeah, well, there was one instance in our game where, in a desperate play to kind of stay in the game and give myself a fighting chance, I played this backstab tactic card, which was able to physically remove one of your patrons. So I removed one of your patrons with double influence, and that forced you to actually take 2 gladiators out of the battle because you no longer had enough patrons to balance out your gladiators. So you got to make sure you have enough patrons, or those gladiators can get picked off.
Yeah, that forced me to completely abandon one of the arenas. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to let you take this arena, and I'm going to focus completely on this other arena.
Right.
So yeah, there's definitely some interesting decisions and moves that you can make.
I like that. I think each game will tell a good story, and it won't become stale. I think the replayability is pretty high on this one. So as far as deck builders go, I agree with you. It's one of the better ones out there.
Yeah, there is lots to track for sure. If you look at a board and you have the arenas have abilities that you have access to, your tableau with your patrons have abilities, you have a hand of cards.
You have a section where you can reserve, maybe
you have some tactic cards in reserve, which we didn't talk about, but it's just another area of the board that you have to keep an eye on and track and understand what's going on. There's tons of iconography in this game, but it's very intuitive. So I will say that I do really like the fact that it's well organized on the card. It's very easy to keep track of what's what once you know what everything does. But there are lots of icons and things to kind of keep an eye on. So if that, sounds like a major barrier to you, maybe this is not for you. But if you like that challenge of looking at this, like 3 or 4 areas of your board and trying to set up combos and do things just right, and tactics and strategy, this might be for you. As I said, it is a heavier in terms of pure deck builders. The time to play this is not like a 20-minute Star Realms.
Right. I was going to say, it says 60 to 90, and ours was that was my first play, so maybe a little slower, but it does get, as you go into the higher rounds, the rounds last longer because the bloodlust level goes up. So you're getting more gladiators in the battle. So and the bigger the deck, the more decisions you have before you as well. So I think,
and it does
you're
build
looking
tension
at close to 90
for that
minutes
reason too. Yeah, I find it does build that tension too as you get to those later rounds and you get into the arena battles. Yeah, I feel like it gets intense, and you definitely feel the theme come through as those battles get bigger and bigger, and the stakes get higher and higher as we get closer to victory. So yeah,
it's quite thematic.
Highly recommend this one. Did you want to get to scores, or did you have anything else to add?
No, I think that's pretty much everything. We've given a good synopsis. Hopefully we didn't scare people away with the heaviness of the game, but I think definitely you can probably find another, if we piqued your interest, find some other reviews or gameplays online. They're out there to be had. You can actually see it in action. And if you're into a deck builder, I think this would be one you'll really enjoy, especially if you like the Gladiator theme. But let's give our scores out. Yeah.
Yeah,
Why don't I
hidden
go
gem
first?
for sure.
Yeah. So again, this is not my go-to style of game. Deck builders are not my favorite, but this one really impressed me. Had a good time with it. Even though I got slaughtered in the arena, still had a good time with it. Enjoyed it. We'll be happy to play it again. So I'm going to give this a solid 8 out of 10. What about you, Matt?
Very
What's
cool.
your score for this one?
Yeah, I have it as an 8.5. When you get into the 9, you're getting into like my all-time favorite games. I don't do 9s very often, so this is like, really close. Maybe with a few more plays, I want to say I've played this 5-6 times now.
Or an expansion,
it had been a while that I'd gotten it to the table, but yeah, maybe with an expansion, a few more games, it might jump into that 9. A 9 or 9 plus, but right now I have it as a solid 8.5. If any of that sounds interesting to you, or if you love deck builders but you want to feel something a little bit different when you're playing a deck builder, this will definitely provide that. It's a very unique, different than any other that I've ever played. So
yeah, it's an upgrade. If you're like you're playing Dominion or Clank, or those are getting kind of stale for you, like this might be one to take that to the next level for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, that's For Glory 2020. Highly recommended. Check it out. And we are going to pivot now. We're in full on gladiatorial games mode, because here we go. We're going to pivot to Gladiator II and have a little discussion about that film, which is in theaters, just dropped. We both saw it in the last few days. I don't think many of our listeners this will be new information that this is a sequel to the massively popular 2000 Gladiator, starring Russell Crowe, which won Best Picture that year, a movie that I know we both really enjoy. So the $1 million question is, does Gladiator 2 stack up or come close to Gladiator? Well, stay tuned. We're going to talk about that. But let me just give a little bit of information about this film. It just dropped, so it's a 2024 release, in case you've been living under a rock and you haven't heard of it. It was written by David Scarpa, who has worked with the director Sir Ridley Scott before. I think they actually collaborated on Napoleon before this one, which is interesting. It's an interesting parallel movie to discuss in conversation with this one. It stars, Russell Crowe does not reprise his role. Although there was, we'll talk about this a little bit later, there was an actual script that was written by the musician Nick Cave. I don't know if you heard about this, for Gladiator 2. And it actually stars Russell Crowe kind of in the afterlife and what he's doing after death, which would have been interesting to see, but they didn't end up going with that script. So this new version, it stars Paul Mescal. He becomes sort of the Russell Crowe type character in this edition. Also, Pedro Pascal stars in this film, and the great Denzel Washington is a pretty bombastic character in this film as well. Those are kind of the three main actors, and there's a host of supporting actors, of course, as well. I'll just read the synopsis, and we are going to get into kind of some spoilers. It's kind of hard to avoid them. So if you haven't seen Gladiator 2 and you don't want any spoilers, you may want to pause the pod here, go check it out, and come back to hear what we have to say about it. So minor spoilers ahead. You've been warned. But let me read the synopsis. This is right from Letterboxd. Years after witnessing the death of the revered hero Maximus, Russell Crowe's character, at the hands of his uncle Lucius, is forced to enter the Colosseum after his home is conquered by the tyrannical emperors who now lead Rome with an iron fist. With rage in his heart and the future of the empire at stake, Lucius must look to his past to find strength and honor to return the glory of Rome to its people. So that's the long and short synopsis of Gladiator 2. Why don't we just dive into our discussion of the plot, of the story, our own reactions to the film. Let me just start with the opening sort of credits, or this sort of animated montage at the beginning, Matt. which I sat down and I was like, it's literally like a flashback to scenes from the original Gladiator as soon as you sit in your seat. And I think both of us watched the original before going to see the sequel, correct? You watched it as well, didn't you?
I didn't like, the last week's been kind of nuts. I didn't get all the way through it. I got about 3/4 way through. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did literally the night before I went to the theater. I thought, I got to watch the original. And I didn't really need to because they show you basically the greatest hits right there in the first 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So it tries to be like kind of a seamless sort of springboard right into this film. And I was a little hesitant when I saw that. I'm like, is this going to just be like a carbon copy of the original? And sure enough, that's kind of what it was. It's a lot of the similar beat for beat, plot for plot stuff, kind of in this one with different characters. So, Matt, what were your thoughts going into the film, coming out of the film, some of your first reactions, impressions? We can talk about the story, some of the plot, the highs and lows of it. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. Like, I really thought that opening sequence was cool. Like, just, it was a very stylized animation that, like you said, went through kind of some of the plot points of the original. I thought it was neat. It was just enough to kind of like remind you, oh, this is where we're at. And so I thought that was kind of cool. But you're right. It is. There are a lot of similar beats, and it reminds me quite a bit of The Force Awakens,
Yep,
Star Wars Episode 7, where exactly the same thing. Like, we're just going beat for beat, basically almost an identical movie. I mean, I think this one a lot less so than Force Awakens, but there's definitely some major points where you're like, okay, we're just doing this again. We're doing this again. With a new generation of characters. But yeah, we open up where we meet Lucius as an adult. We don't know he's Lucius, unless you've kind of read up on it. I didn't know it was Lucius. I had a long time ago heard that it was about Lucius, and then kind of forgot until there was the reveal in the film. Like, oh yeah, okay, kind of saw it coming as well. Yeah. But so we open up with Lucius, and he's there. He's obviously, in love with his wife. They live a nice, really quiet life. And then, the horns go off and the city's being attacked. And so in comes the Romans on boats. Pedro Pascal is the general. Yeah. And they come in. I guess it's North
Africa, right? Namibia is.
Yeah. A lot of the
supposed to be sort of northeast Africa there that they're attacking as they expand their Roman Empire. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And like a lot of the like geographical and like, different. I mean, everybody just speaks English. Yeah. Everybody's just like either white or black. It seems like everybody's just kind of, it's like a very vague. It's similar to the original, right? Like,
sure.
They talk about Russell Crowe being the Spaniard, but it doesn't act or look like a Spaniard, doesn't have an accent.
Right.
There's nothing to really tell you other than the fact that they call him the Spaniard over and over again.
Sure.
So they're basically, they take the same approach with this one. It's like, it doesn't really matter to the plot who's who and where things happen. It's just like, we know the big players and what their intentions are and what's happened to them, and that's kind of what we have to go on. So the city gets attacked. His wife gets killed. He gets taken into slavery. And then basically this is like just Gladiator over again, where he gets taken to into slavery and is a gladiator, and he goes to the school. And then Denzel Washington is the ludus, as we just learned the new term, the owner of the little gladiator school, or his kind of troop, or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, Denzel kind of notices him, that he's like, on fire, and he's like raging, and he's obviously very skilled, and he kind of takes him under his wing and tells him, very similar to what we saw in the first one, where he's like, okay, you're special, and we're gonna train you, and we're gonna you're gonna go all the way to Rome and whatnot, or all the way to the Colosseum,
where you can maybe win your freedom, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So very, very similar beats at that point. And one thing that I thought was a little bit strange, jumping ahead a little bit here, but we get the impression that he has lived, or I guess we find out that he lived almost his entire life, in this other country. He's not, he's originally from Rome, but he doesn't seem to have any actual roots in Rome. He has his roots in this other country and, Africa and all of that. And, he doesn't seem to care about Rome and all of that, and about the people and restoring Rome to the people and blah blah blah. It seems to be just a vengeance plot.
Yeah,
that he doesn't care anything about any of that. And then halfway through the movie, all of a sudden he starts talking and about the way Rome used to be and how I see Rome, and he all of a sudden he's waxing philosophical about how Rome should be and the previous leaders and poetry and all this stuff, and it just seemed like a weird turn for that character.
Yeah, and we should say too, related to the vengeance theme, in that initial battle, it's specifically the character played by Pedro Pascal who he's got his sights set on. He's sort of the general of the army that's attacking. Mm-hmm. So sort of what Russell Crowe's character was the beginning of Gladiator, right? He was leading the battles and then coming back to the Emperor. And I think this takes place 16 years after.
That's right.
Correct me if I'm wrong. 16 years after the death of Marcus Aurelius. So yeah, he's the one that really he wants to get revenge of. So there's a point when he's training that Denzel Washington's character says, "Well, what do you want? Whose head do you want?" And he said, "I want the general's head." And Denzel kind of laughs, says, "Well, the way you're fighting, keep it up, and I'll be able to give you whoever you want, right? If you just help me get rich here, I'll be your patron, and we can help each other out." So that's basically where it goes. But yeah, you're right. That it kind of shifts. He doesn't really care about Rome, and maybe. And again, heavy spoilers right now. So if you don't want any more spoilers, check out for a little bit. But he has an encounter with his mother midway through the movie, right? And we get a flashback. We get some flashbacks and realize that the reason he's no longer in Rome is that after Russell Crowe's character died in the original, Mom feared for the life of herself and her son, so she put him on a horse and says, "We got to get rid of you for your own benefit." And
go live off in the darkness somewhere.
Yeah, in the darkness of
live
night.
Your life.
He rides off, and he's able to grow up and continue to live. But obviously, maybe looking back, he's got some trauma from that. Maybe he's definitely got some mom issues, right? You've abandoned me. He didn't realize that it was for his own benefit. And so when he sort of meets her in the Colosseum, she recognizes him as Lucius. And we realize not only is she his mom, but guess who she's with? She's with Pedro Pascal's character, person who he wants to have his head on a platter, so to speak. So, plot thickens, right? So, and we also realize that Pedro Pascal's character is basically not too sympathetic to the Roman emperors and where the state of Rome is, that he almost wants to lead a bit of a coup himself, right, to restore Rome to what it was. So things start to get interesting.
This part I found actually very interesting, and I really like that kind of decision. We haven't really seen I don't think we've seen really any kind of characters in even the original that were so that's one thing that I really appreciated about that character and that decision, was that we haven't really seen any conflicted characters in this series before. There was the good guys, the bad guys, everybody had clear intentions, and we knew what everybody was up to. But one thing that I really appreciate about this one was Pedro Pascal. And at first I was sort of excited to see evil mustache twirling Pedro Pascal. And then we find out that he's conflicted. I thought, okay, that's an interesting decision. I was sort of expecting at the onset Pedro Pascal to be the Joaquin Phoenix of the new
that's
kind
the one
of
area
movie.
where it kind of differs from the original.
Yeah, and anytime a movie can kind of take me off guard or show me something different or interesting, I'm like, okay, you got my attention. I will say I loved the first act of this movie. Like I was in and I was ready and I was excited in the first act. The setup was really good. I'm like, okay, some of the standard tropes, but I did really like the introduction of Pedro Pascal. Obviously, the Lucius character was badass, and he was that opening sequence, that big war, was very, very cool. Lots of stuff there that I hadn't seen before. Catapults and trebuchets on boats firing in both directions, and there's just like a huge epic opening sequence. That we saw that in the first movie as well. But yeah, and then we kind of get introduced to Denzel Washington's character, which again, in the first act, I loved his character. Like, that guy wears robes the way that, like, Donald Glover wore capes in like Solo. Like, nobody has worn a cape or a robe that well since Donald Glover. Yeah, he just looked great. He had the swagger, and when Denzel's confident like that, like he's fun to watch.
Yeah, he was interesting in this movie. I really found, like, I left the movie theater thinking, man, this is like going back to his role in Training Day, playing the dirty, corrupt cop, because he seems like a guy you want to root for early in the film, and then you realize, yeah, he's just got his own ulterior motives, and he's basically using Paul Mescal's character to get his own power and influence, right? And so all that comes to a head near the end. But like you, I really enjoyed the first act. Things really started to wobble for me when they just added so much nostalgia and callbacks. When Connie Nielsen's character shows up, Lucius's mom, I just kind of groan. I'm like, oh, here we go. And then the two emperors, we haven't talked about them, but the Joaquin Phoenix character is sort of times two, or tries to be times two in this one, with these brothers. These brothers are now the emperors, and they're just these buffoons that just are pretty immature, and they're just chasing after glory and spectacle and violence themselves. And the Empire is kind of a mess at large, and people don't like them, but they're the ones pulling the strings. And yet there's the Senate, the senators in the background that are trying to be coy about it, and Denzel Washington's kind of mixing with them to try and get his own power and influence. But these two emperors, they were just kind of over the top, and I kind of get it, right? There were a lot of flamboyant leaders back in historical ancient Rome. I understand. I've done a lot of the history myself, but more often than not, they just really didn't work for me in this film. I just kept thinking of Ed Sheeran with syphilis. It kind of reminded me of this Ed Sheeran type character. Yeah.
Yeah, I did like. It was kind of interesting. Okay, two emperors. Okay, that's a new, different twist. Sure. I didn't mind the Joseph Quinn character. So the kind of like leader of the two brothers. We originally saw him in Stranger Things in the latest season of that. He was great there. And then more recently, we saw him in A Quiet Place Day One.
Quiet Place Day One, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm really liking his choices and his performances lately, and I didn't mind his performance. It was more the choice of what he had, what those characters ended up doing and going, that I wasn't a fan of. And his brother, the kind of one that was like maybe had mental health and was a little bit slower or not as sharp, was not a fan of that character. Felt like he's the one that felt like a cartoon character that was not grounded at all in this world.
Absolutely.
I feel like if that character didn't exist and it was just the Joseph Quinn, I feel like the movie just gains 10% credibility. Right off
Fred
the bat
Heckinger.
with that.
Yeah. And I just want to shout out, if you want to see a better movie this year with Fred Heckinger, watch the movie Thelma. That's a fantastic film. Just a quick shout out there, but yeah. But yeah, cool. Those guys were kind of, they took me out of the flow of the film. Every time they were on screen, I was just kind of rolling my eyes. And then
Yeah.
some of the battles, when you talk about the arena battles, right? Just like in the Game for Glory, they just kind of go up and up and up in spectacle until they're just bonkers and off the wall. We've got these CGI baboons and monkey creatures in the first battle. And then we got this massive rhino with a guy on top of him in another battle. And then things really go off the rails where we've got these boats with the Colosseum flooded with water and sharks. And it's like, wow, rhinos and baboons and sharks. Oh my.
Yeah.
So it just kind of lost me with that. I mean, I know he's just going for spectacle and over the top, and that's kind of what Ridley Scott's about in his late stage directing career. But it was just a little too much for my liking, almost laughable near the end.
Yeah, there's some of that I liked more than others. It's like the flooding sequence with the sharks. Like, I really loved all the boat stuff.
Yeah.
They're like, tactically moving these boats, and then one rams the other, and there's like archers and then combat on the boats. Like, all of that stuff I loved. But then, like, there's every time somebody falls in the water, they would get eaten up. That part of it I didn't like. So it was like, it felt like, I don't know, like 40% of each decision was like, on the wrong side of things. Or pushed it too far, or pushed the envelope too far, or lost credibility. The one key word that I wrote down here was earned. So there was a lot of things that I felt weren't earned. Character decisions and moments and things that just weren't built up properly. And there was other things that were able, like, I want to say Denzel and our lead, remind me of his name again.
Paul Mescal.
Paul Mescal. Those two guys, their gravitas and their acting kind of held things together for me. In a lot of cases where I was like, oh, okay, but like, similar to my criticism from the last episode where we talked about Interstellar, where Michael Caine had that like poem that he kept repeating over and over again.
Yeah.
And his role was like fairly dramatic and felt a little bit over the top sometimes, but it's Michael Caine, and because of his gravitas and who he is and his performance, he pulls it off and holds it together. And I felt that we got some of that from Denzel in this movie, where things were like, and a little bit from Pedro Pascal as well, where I'm like, oh, I don't know, do I buy this? Do I not buy this? Is this earned or not? And then Denzel walks onto the scene with his swagger and his capes and his robes, and you're like, okay, yeah, this is fun. I'm along for the ride. So there's portions where I'm like, I don't buy it, and portions where I'm having a great time. So I'm definitely of two minds with this movie.
Yeah,
for sure.
Denzel was the highlight for me, more often than not. And some of the early scenes in the battles, there's a spectacle there. But at the end of the day, I'm like, yeah, it's fine, but do I want to rewatch this film when I can just go watch the original? Like, I don't know if I want to revisit this film anytime soon, if ever, right?
Yeah, it doesn't hold a candle to the first one, and I'm not sure I would need to revisit it either. Maybe pull it up and watch some of the action sequences. Some of those are pretty well done. Some of the decisions are a little bit awkward. I personally love the rhino scene. I was down with that.
Yeah, that was cool.
The baboons were take it or leave it. I was fine with it. So some of the decision and the sharks, I was not down for the sharks, and it didn't even make sense to me that they could fill the Colosseum with water. Like, are they able to waterproof all the gates and the doors? And like,
I took a guided tour of the Colosseum a few years ago. I don't remember them talking about water being ever flooded or those water battles. That
didn't make any sense to me. So like, some of the decision making and the sharks and whatever was not cool, but like, Ridley Scott knows how to direct an amazing action sequence. So like, despite the stuff that took me out of it a little bit, I'm like, this action sequence is great and I'm having fun. So
the production design, you're always going to get fantastic production design and cinematography with Ridley Scott and an epic like this. And so you know what the strengths are going to be there. I just found like, you're adding all these animals in these battles when some of the best battles were just the hand-to-hand combat stuff. I wanted more of that. Like the one that was in the Emperor's chambers when he's challenging this guy. That was pretty cool.
Yeah,
Stuff's being broken and tossed around, right? That's not even in the Coliseum, but that was one of my favorite fight scenes. And it had no animals involved. And it was just like, here's Denzel, like putting his guy forward against the challenger, right, to see if he's worthy to be in the Coliseum. So I thought that scene was pretty cool. But really mixed bag. I mean, there's a couple of really high highs, but the lows are pretty low. And I wrote in my review that, in one of my biggest pet peeves with Hollywood movies right now is the lack of original stuff. It's just lazy IP, sequels, remakes, and this is kind of Exhibit A maybe for 2024, where it's just kind of lazy nostalgia, callbacks, and some of the same plot points and beats. When I'd rather see a much more original film, and so it left me wanting more, and it left me left reminding me that the worst part of Hollywood is just recycling the same old stuff, lesser versions of their predecessors, sadly.
Yeah, and like that being said, I still had a blast with Force Awakens.
I like Force Awakens much better than Gladiator II, for sure.
Yeah, agreed. And although that followed all the same beats, a lot of the character decisions and the world building and the stakes and the escalation and the battles, there's just the screenplay was a lot better. And so if they had done that here, I feel like there was like 15% of like the script and decisions and the ordering of the way that things went down that I felt could have just tied this all together in a way better way, and I would have been totally okay with it. One great example is I just didn't like when Lucius was put in the arena with Pedro Pascal and the two of them are fighting, and then Pedro has a couple of lines where he explains something, and then Lucius kind of like loses his vengeance and his rage and chooses not to kill him. I didn't buy that for a second, and I feel like they had that backwards, because I feel like what they should have done was plant more seeds with Lucius for him to learn what's going on with Pedro and the nuances of Pedro's character. If he had found out about the coup, if he had found out in another way about how he's not like super happy about, because immediately after that battle, Pedro Pascal goes back and he's talking to his wife and he's like, man, standing on that beach and hearing all those grieving mothers and wives and families, like, I don't want to do this. And immediately you're like, okay, this guy's just doing his job. He doesn't want to do it anymore. I get it. And if they were able to convey that message to Lucius somehow prior to that interaction, then I would have bought it,
Well,
then
I think
maybe
they tried. I think they tried. I don't think it was successful, but they tried through the interactions with his mom as this sort of intermediary between Pedro Pascal and Lucius.
Pedro Pascal was barely mentioned in that conversation.
Letting him leave and her husband's, sympathies and whatnot. There was seeds of it, but I don't think it succeeded.
Yeah, definitely did not succeed, because I didn't see that at all. And like in that, there was one interaction prior to that scene, I think, between Lucius and his mother, and Lucius did not want to hear anything his mother had to say. Right. He just yelled at her and get out of here and whatever, and didn't listen to anything. So to me, nothing had penetrated. He hadn't like heard or listened to any of that. I feel like if through the Gladiator school or through his doctor friend who keeps patching him up, if that doctor friend had like talked about, I heard there's a coup going on, or I heard that the general's not happy with the emperor and doesn't like whatever, like something else to plant that seed. And then you could see Lucius digesting that information, but like none of that was set up. And that's just one example of like just the screenplay being in the wrong order, or not enough information being conveyed to the right characters at the right time. If a lot of that stuff was tied up, I feel like we could have done a lot better. And I think
absolutely.
Like that second emperor, if it was just the Joseph Quinn character, that that whole section of the movie would have been like way better for me. So there's lots of those types of things that just didn't fit for me personally.
Yeah, I think really the script is the weakness. The script really does a disservice to the cast. And I'll ride with Paul Mescal. I love that guy. After Sun is still my favorite movie of the 2020s. Denzel Washington's like, can't impeach him at this point of his career. Like,
no,
but
great.
it's just the script, the screenplay is so wobbly. They do the best they can with what they're given, but they're just not given very much to work with as far as dialogue and screenplay.
Yeah.
So I think
and like near the end of the movie, the doctor agrees to help Lucius, gives him the keys.
Yeah.
Rides off to go talk to the army. Like, that's not earned. Why is the doctor all of a sudden like in Lucius's corner and helping him? Like, what does he have to gain through all of this? Like, we didn't see them bond to a level that he would like risk everything in his life and his, so that I didn't buy. The whole like the plot with Denzel taking over the empire, murdering the brothers, and then gaining all that power so quickly, like that didn't feel earned either. So those were the big holes for me.
Yeah, and the biggest one, again, if you're still with us, major spoiler for the next 2 minutes, we find out that Lucius's father is Maximus.
Yeah, we didn't know that. I didn't miss that from the first one, right?
No,
we didn't know that.
I thought like every time I watched Gladiator, did I take a pee break at the same time? And did I miss that part of the original? But I just watched it the night before. I'm like, there's nothing that hints at that in the original. They just added that in, which is ludicrous because Russell Crowe's character, he was like the consummate family man, right? It seemed like he was so faithful to his wife, and yet, they talked about, I think in the first one, like having kids that are like basically the same age. So, which is wild. So basically, he's having an affair with her, and basically he's the father. While we're supposed to see him as this consummate family man, right? It's just, I don't really didn't really fit
Maximus
for me.
is supposed to be held up as this like godlike figure, this image of perfection, the image of integrity, right?
Yeah.
And then now,
Totally
and it's funny
that.
because we talked a little bit earlier in this podcast about how sequels don't necessarily, the original movies can stand on their own. Well, you kind of have to ignore that piece of information for the original movie to still feel the way that it felt.
Yeah.
Because he's not that perfect image of integrity that we are kind of led to believe.
Yeah, so then it just devolves into like this strange sort of nostalgia, and then these trying to give Mescal these inspiring speeches with a wobbly script that don't stand up to Russell Crowe's speeches and monologues, and it's, I won't spoil the ending. We've spoiled enough, but at the end of the day, this is a pretty messy film. So what's your score for this one,
Speaking
Matt?
of the ending, without going too much into the development, but there ends up being a fight between who we see is probably the best fighter in Rome, in Lucius, and he fights Denzel Washington, who all we see him is sit around drinking wine and eating grapes.
Yeah.
And like Denzel bests him like multiple times before like ultimately like the battle ends differently, but like he's literally standing toe to toe. Like if he was that good, he could have been a gladiator himself and gained all this power. And that, I don't know, it's just like I didn't buy that either. But like one of the biggest things for me, it just felt like they should have written a different path for Lucius to get to where he ended up, as opposed to just writing it exactly the beat for beat,
right, in
the same steps as Maximus.
Yeah, it was pretty sloppily, lazily written. And I heard like this script had gone under so many rewrites over the years. That's always a warning sign, right? So
yeah. Overall, I loved all the action. I loved all the set pieces. some of the nuances of the set pieces kind of like took me out a tiny bit. We talked about the sharks in the water and stuff, but overall, the set pieces, the action sequences, and the performances held it together for me barely. But I did like it. I think that the drama and the character stuff didn't quite work as well as the action, the set pieces, the look and feel of the movie. So I still had a good time with it. I gave it a 3. You know, which is, you know, when for me a 2.5 is like I barely liked it. A 3 is like I liked it, but I didn't love it. You know, and then the 3.5 is and higher is where I start to be like, okay, I had a really great time.
Yeah.
And you know, it stands out. So for me, it was, you know, a little bit better than okay. I had a good time with it. I saw it in theaters on the big screen, so that helps a lot too.
Sure.
Yeah. So
well,
that's
I guess
where
based on that criteria, I barely liked it because I gave it that 2.5 out of 5. Like it's just barely a passing grade for me. And again, I think we've discussed the pros and cons of it. It's not one I'll be running to rewatch anytime soon, though. My kids have never seen the original even. We're waiting to show them that one. And maybe when I do, maybe we'll watch both back to back. That's probably the only time I'll revisit the second one.
Yeah.
But hey, I hope it launches Paul Mescal into greater stardom. Hey, I'll ride with Denzel no matter what role he wants to play. So I'll ride with those guys. It's just a shame the screenplay was just so sloppy and was a real disservice to this great cast.
Yeah. Right on. That kind of wraps things up for Gladiator. Or Gladiator 2. We didn't talk much. I doubt it. I mean, how old is Ridley Scott?
Oh, he's mid-80s there now, I think. He's getting up there. Isn't he in his 80s? I don't know. You want to look that up?
He's 86, yeah.
86, yeah. Yeah, it may not be by him. Maybe he'll pass the reins to someone else, just like the Alien franchise has gone on, right? I don't know. I really hope they don't, though. I think...
Yeah, I mean...
There's no need to.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I agree. The Gladiator is one of my all-time favorite movies, and if you're watching on the video, like you may have noticed, I have a full sleeve tattoo, and they're basically just iconic films and some of my favorite films, and I have Maximus there.
There he is.
So yeah, I wonder if we should have a little like song or sound effect or something every time we cover a movie that's on my sleeve. But I'm a huge fan of the original. And then like, you know, you had texted me when you had first seen this, and basically you just said, what a mess. And I was like, ugh, you know, okay, yikes. Hopefully I enjoy it.
I'd rather undersell than oversell. So there you go.
Yeah, fair enough. And then my response to that was like, you never know how nostalgia will land. Because there are some cases where, depending on how it's done and the way it's delivered,
there it is, right?
I'll eat up the nostalgia stuff sometimes, depending on how fan servicey it is and how if the script actually works and if the character decisions are believable, et cetera, et cetera. So there's tons of nostalgia in The Force Awakens that I ate up and loved, and there's tons of fan servicey nostalgia stuff in Rise of Skywalker that make me want to vomit. I didn't know how this one would land, knowing that it had a lot of it leaned a lot on the previous material, and overall it landed on the positive a little bit more than the negative, but definitely does not quite hold a candle to the OG.
Yeah. I think we probably expected that going in, right? I mean, one of your favorite movies all time, you're not expecting it to equal it.
Yeah.
But I think it was not slightly lesser than, it was significantly lesser than. But hey,
it's interesting because the reviews are mostly positive.
Are they?
It's a 3.4 on Letterboxd, which is like fairly high for Letterboxd. Yeah.
I'm curious to see if that goes up or down as we go, but yeah. Cool. Well, that's For Glory. That's Gladiator 2. Man, I just feel like we spent the last couple hours in ancient Rome here, right? That was a game dripping with theme and a movie that tried its best to match its predecessor. Ridley Scott must be going a bit senile because he's publicly said this is the best movie he's ever made. I don't know if that was just a promotional gig, but this is far. This is the guy who made Alien and Blade Runner. This is not your best movie.
Yeah.
Far from it.
Yeah, you have Alien, Gladiator, Blade Runner in your resume. Like, you're probably not making a better movie than any else.
No. You want to watch a better movie by this guy set in medieval times? Watch the very underrated The Last Duel. I'm a big fan of that movie.
Yes.
And what separates that movie from this movie is that script is incredible, right? That screenplay is phenomenal. I almost wonder if people would have went to the theater to see that made more money. Maybe this messy sequel wouldn't even exist today. But I guess Ridley just loves to keep going back to these period pieces. And Last Duels, I will fight for that movie. And I know a lot of our listeners probably don't even know that movie exists. I think you like it as well, Matt. So shout that one up.
Huge fan of The Last Duel. That was on my top 10 of that year. And
nice.
Definitely hugely underrated. Like, more people need to see that movie.
For sure.
Maybe we'll cover it
at
down
the box office, unfortunately. But it's a great film.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, we better land the plane here. So, any final thoughts or anything you wanted to add, Matt, before we sign off?
No, ultimately I was entertained, but barely.
I was somewhat entertained. Yes.
Somewhat.
Well, thanks everyone. If you're enjoying the podcast, please take a few minutes to rate and review on whatever platform you're listening on or viewing on. You can follow us as always on Instagram at Dice Camera Action Pod. And if you have any feedback, comments, or would like to suggest another movie and game pairing for a future episode, we would love to get your feedback and suggestions. So you can email us anytime at dicecameraactionpod@gmail.com. So Matt, thanks for introducing me to For Glory. Thanks for this great conversation about that game and this film. And I look forward to being with you and all of our listeners for many more episodes here at Dice Camera Action.
Cheers.